Hello, my friends. I got a great question on a video yesterday about what is the relationship between the nervous system and the limbic system. So we're going to make this concise, and as always, the brain and nervous system are marvelously complex systems, so this is a bit of an oversimplification just to understand on a basic level. And so our limbic system is one part of our brain. It's located in the center of the brain, and again is responsible for or involved in more of our sensory and emotional processing. Scanning of the environment and the evaluation of our sensory input. And our nervous system, there's actually three aspects to the nervous system. One is your central nervous system, which includes the brain as a whole and spinal cord. Your peripheral nervous system, which is the rest of the nervous system that goes and connects to every cell in your body and allows you to have sensory, be able to feel the rest of your body. And then you'll have your enteric nervous system, which is located just in the gut. It is its own little entity there, but it's still part of the peripheral nervous system. So the nervous system is much more broad. It spreads through our entire body. And think of nerve endings, right? This is how we experience texture and temperature and sense the environment to know what is safe and what is not. And also just to be able to interpret our environment and make emotional meaning of, the warmth of someone's hug, communicating love, or someone having a microaggressive expression on their face. Like, there's a lot of complex dance between the brain and nervous system to create meaning from all that sensory input. The brain in this situation is more responsible for the meaning making and kind of directing our attention in a certain sense towards what are we scanning for, and also decision making. Like if your nervous system picks up and this is part of how you can react to something before it reaches your conscious awareness. Like you might touch a hot stove and pull back before you even realize that it was hot. And that's what it's kind of amazing. We watch our reflexes. That's how quickly your nervous system and brain are communicating and making decisions to keep you safe. So, but obviously this can happen with things that are cross-wired, where we might have that response to, the sound of a cupboard closing. We might jump because our systems are so sensitive that the brain perceives that as the same as a car crash outside your window or a dog barking right next to your ear. When we're really overly sensitive, that meaning can be altered and be exaggerated in ways that aren't accurate, but it keeps us constantly feeling like we're in imminent danger. So there's a couple of things really useful in this for brain retraining specifically, which is that the emotional meaning and the stories that our brain is creating, whether or not we're investing in them, whether they're positive or negative, but the meaning we give to our sensations that the nervous system is telling us about from our body and the environment, that's one thing. But also just the stories playing in our mind about our symptoms, about ourselves, about our circumstances, those create emotion. And that's information to the nervous system of whether we're safe or not. So if we have continuous negative stories playing about our symptoms, our circumstances, or ourselves, and the people around us, or the world events, like anything, where the nervous system is receiving constant messages of threat and danger directly from the brain. And that's going to tell it to go either into freeze, like, oh my God, there's so much threat, I can't do anything about it. It's, the world's burning, it's on fire, I can't control it. And then we go into freeze and shut down. I'm powerless, I have no agency, I'm not safe. That's going to really impact your nervous system and your ability to, if your nervous system's in freeze, you're not going to be able to do very much. But same thing, whether it's that, it doesn't matter. Any of those things, any of those stories, if they're negative, might put you into flight, might put you into fight, any of them. Now, the same thing goes, though, when we flip that and we reframe our experiences, our circumstances, ourselves, our identity, and especially our symptoms to a positive view, one that is empowering or that signals that all is well. This is just a false message firing from my limbic system. Doesn't mean anything. We're totally fine. Where I am now in my physical environment is safe. I'm going to focus on that instead of world events or all these other things outside of my control in my own personal life. One thing I wanted to bring into this is the naming our symptoms. This is something that I'm really big on because it's something a lot of people like to do, is still name their symptoms. But for most people who've had chronic symptoms, there's been a process of developing that symptom, diagnosing that symptom, and living with that symptom that has left a number of imprints in a very potent and slightly traumatic or possibly very traumatic way in your nervous system. Where when you say that, even if you're thinking it in your mind or you're saying it out loud, the name of the symptom, instead of seeing it as my limbic system is activated, it brings up all of that in the nervous system of all of these times that we felt so terrified, out of control, overwhelmed, despairing, whatever it is that are associated with that's the name of the symptom. And that's part of the reason I encourage people avidly, regularly, not to name their symptoms, because it just drags all that to the surface and it's circling around in our nervous system, remembering it over and over again. So this is part of where we want to interrupt those stories to focus only on what is actually within our control in our lives as a whole, and then train our brains to focus on positive sensory input and positive emotional input, and give ourselves positive sensory and emotional input to focus on. So that might look like decorating your space, keeping pleasant music on hand, wearing fabrics that you enjoy the feeling of, watching funny things, watching beautiful things, coloring and writing things that are inspiring or beautiful to you. It's important to give your body as a whole positive things, and then also train the brain to focus on them. Because again, if we're not mastering our attention, our nervous system it's not going to be able to shift to only positive focus without the brain being involved. But also that's where bottom-up things come in, like somatics and so forth. If we give the body a positive experience, it sends signals of safety to the brain. That's bottom-up. Top-down is when we mentally focus on positive things, on positive visualizations and positive, reframes of our symptoms or our circumstances or ourselves, and then that sends a signal of safety down to the nervous system. So that's your basic layout of your brain and nervous system and how they intertwine and how you can use that to your advantage in brain retraining. Love you guys.